In the first two chapters of this book, Habakkuk is just complaining to God. Now, what is he complaining about? You'd think it'd be something like, "Oh Lord, why are the nations attacking us? Crush our enemies, O God. Why, O Lord, do the nations despise us? Exalt the Son of David on his throne." But actually, here in chapter 1, it's quite the opposite. Take a look at this. "O Lord, how long shall I cry for help?" This looks like a lament psalm from the book of Psalms, doesn't it? "I cry to you violence, and you do not save. You make me to see iniquity and look at wrong while you just look at it idly. Destruction and violence are before me." But this destruction and this violence, it's not being committed by the nations against Judah. Rather, this is violence being committed by Judeans on their own people. And Habakkuk, he is grieved that the people of God are breaking the law of God. I mean, you got to remember, this is like right after the reign of Manasseh, the last years of his reign, first years of the king Josiah. Manasseh is the worst king that Judah has ever seen. There's idolatry, it's rampant, probably child sacrifices taking place. The rich are abusing the poor. And Habakkuk cries out, "How long, O Lord, will this go on? And will you look at it just idly?" Do something, he says. Don't just idly look at this wickedness in Judah while justice is being perverted. Well, God responds to Habakkuk's first complaint by saying, "I am doing something, Habakkuk." Now, you look and see the wickedness in your own nations. I invite you to look and see the nations around you. "For I am raising up one of them, Babylon, as my rod of discipline against the covenant breakers in Judah." Now, I can just imagine how Habakkuk responds to this solution of God. He's like, "Oh, this is a terrible idea. Yes, I understand that you have ordained Babylon as just as a reproof and discipline, but Babylon's terrible." Let's go to chapter 1 here. "I'm raising up Babylon," he says. But Habakkuk responds, "Yes, you've ordained them as judgment. You've established them, the Babylonians, as reproof, but they are an awful and wicked nation. What they do is simply, or how can you, O God, a righteous God, remain silent when the wicked Babylon swallows up a man more righteous than he? Judah, we're not as bad as they are. And besides, I thought, O God, that you are of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong. Well, let me tell you, O God, Babylon is definitely evil. I mean, they live in luxury while they cast their net over the nations and they pull them up like fish and just gobble them down, nom, 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 eating up all of the nations." Well, it seems as if this empire building and this lust for power is Habakkuk's core complaint against God's use of Babylon. Take a look at a collection of verses pointing to this sinful activity of Babylon, gobbling up all of the nations. They seize dwellings that are not their own, and they devour them, gathering captives like sand, and piling up the earth and taking it for their own, swallowing up the peoples, casting a net and a hook and a dragnet over them and hauling them to the surface, mercilessly killing the nations, gathering up the nations, collecting the peoples, plundering them, cutting them off. Well, Habakkuk, maybe he has a point, but he also has some nerve to question God like this. However, the prophet Habakkuk is never rebuked by God for issuing his complaint against him like this. If anything, God, he invites this honest questioning, and he supplies answers to Habakkuk's questions as well. And his answer here in this section is so definite that he tells Habakkuk to write it down. Write down the vision, God says, for I have appointed a time for its fulfillment, and nothing will stop the fulfillment of this vision. Yes, the arrogant and the greedy in Babylon and in Judah, they deny my authority, but the righteous, but you, O Habakkuk, um, your role is to wait. Your role is to wait for the fulfillment of my word. And now, at this point, we have reached the core of the message of the book of Habakkuk. Let's go to chapter 2 here. All right, we're at holy ground here in the book of Habakkuk. Write the vision. Its appointed time is coming. Yes, the soul of the arrogant and the greedy is puffed up, but the righteous will live by his faith in my word, Yahweh says. Now, you probably recognize this verse. It's one of Paul's two favorite verses. The Apostle Paul, his favorite verse is probably Genesis 15:6, which records that Abraham believed God, and that belief was credited to him as righteousness. The Apostle Paul's second favorite verse is here in Habakkuk 2:4, where the righteous will live by their faith. And this, according to Paul, summarizes the gospel. Let's see how he uses this verse in Romans and Galatians. So, according to the Apostle Paul, the gospel, the righteousness of God becomes ours when we believe and have faith. And this righteousness, this justification, it's not awarded to those who rely on the works of the law, but rather the righteous are justified by their faith. And then jumping over to the book of Hebrews, I know this is not the Apostle Paul. This book contends that we must cling to this faith in the midst of darkness, and when life doesn't make sense. The saints that the author of Hebrews wrote to were certainly being persecuted. They had need of endurance. There was the threat that they may shrink away, but rather they're to cling to that faith and so preserve their souls. And it seems like this last application out of the book of Hebrews is the one that's closest to Habakkuk's heart, where God tells him to write down this vision and then cling by faith to the fulfillment of that word. Well, all right, we've been talking about this vision quite a lot. What is this vision here in chapter 2, verse 2? Well, the sovereign Lord of the universe, the God of all creation, he has the right to use a wicked nation like Babylon as his rod of discipline against his covenant people, Judah. But that doesn't mean that he approves of their wickedness, and he will certainly judge that nation for its wickedness. So then, after this point, after this kind of ambiguous vision, God clarifies by pronouncing 5 woes against the nation of Babylon. And each of these woes kind of has a lex talionis, eye for an eye, reap what you sow kind of character to them. So because Babylon plundered many nations, so they will be plundered by the nations in the first woe. Because they built their house and they set their nest up on high, thinking that they will be safe from harm, so that house will fall down around them. And likewise, they built their city, the capital city, thinking it was it could never fall, it could never be conquered. But that city is destined for fire, this city of blood. Well, Babylon, we learn, is destined for fire, but the prophet Habakkuk foresees that the earth is destined not for for fire, although 2 Peter has its own things to say about this. But with this metaphor, it's destined for water, for being filled with the knowledge of the glory of God. Let's take a look at that. Habakkuk 2:14, another one of this book's kind of most famous verses here. For Babylon, that city of blood, it is destined for fire, but the earth, it will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of Yahweh as the waters cover the sea. You see, one day there will be no more violence in Judah, no more arrogance among the nations. And Habakkuk, in chapter 3, he's going to pray for that day to come. And we're going to take a look at that prayer next.